Hey guys, Alex here from the DMs Club on the Titan Bear Gaming YouTube channel. If you've been watching the other videos in my Dungeon Mastery 100 series, then you right now have a group of players that are ready to go. They've got characters that are made, and they're just waiting for you to tell them when you're ready to play. So let's go ahead and get you ready. Let's get you started to play your first game session. This video is Dungeon Mastery 103, running a pre-written adventure module. Now your first step is choosing the adventure that you want to run. You have a lot of different options that you can pick from in this case, but the one that I suggest most is to run some of the hardcover publications that were released by Wizards of the Coast themselves. That's this big stack here. It's got Dungeons & Dragons written directly on the cover, so you know it's the official copy. I like doing these for new Dungeon Masters because they've got a lot of hours of playtesting that go into them, and there's a lot of people that have already run them. So if you run afoul of anything weird, or if something seems strange in terms of how that plot progresses, you've got a lot of resources that you can go talk to for figuring out how to run it yourself. But if you don't like any of these possible options, you've got a bunch of other things that you could do. You can go to DM's Guild website, where there's a bunch of homebrew stuff that members of the community are writing themselves for brand new custom stuff. And they get submitted up there for peer review, so you've got a level of guarantee that they're actually going to be tuned and there's not going to be anything strange or anything unusual in those. Now, no matter where you source your adventure from, there's really only one thing that you need to make sure of, and that is that it is level appropriate for the adventurers that you're going to be running. If you're a brand new Dungeon Master, you're probably going to be starting off your game at level 1. You might be starting at level 2 if that's your discretion, but all you really care about is making sure that listed at the beginning of any of your adventure modules that it tells you what levels the monsters and the encounters are tuned for, so that you know you're running the right level range. Otherwise, make the decision based on what seems interesting to you. At the beginning of each adventure module, and this is fairly common even in the third-party and homebrew stuff that you'll find on DM's Guild, there are 2 sections that are at the beginning of each of these adventure modules. The first section is an introduction to the adventure. This is going to be some kind of story or role-playing description about setting the scene and what kinds of thematic thing you're going to be dealing with. And then there's an adventure outline or adventure summary. Read through both of these when you're trying to decide which one you want to run for yourself, so that you know what all you're going to be subjecting your players to and what kinds of things they're going to be doing over the course of the adventure. But otherwise, the only thing that really matters in terms of selecting a game that you want to run, a module that you want to run, is that you, the Dungeon Master, are interested in it and are excited to run it. Yes, the story is written down in paper format, but the players aren't going to be reading the book. The players are going to be interacting with you as you're the one telling the story, bringing the characters to life, describing the environments, etc. So pick a story that's got a thematic element that you're interested in, that have monsters that you're excited for, that you like, and have a villain with some kind of nefarious plot that you believe in, that you think is actually a good story to run. Since you're the storyteller, you're going to be the one bringing this story to life. Now, once you've narrowed down your selection to 1 or 2 modules, the next step is to read through it cover to cover. Yes, it can be a little bit meaty and it can be a little bit chewy of stuff to read through, but you've got to do it. You need to know what all is going to be contained in that adventure before you run it. Once you've read through it one time, go back and read through it a second time. Yes, cover to cover. Just like when you're reading a normal novel or watching a movie, knowing the end makes a big difference in terms of how you interpret the different things that happen at the beginning of the story and things that happen at the middle of the story. As the Dungeon Master, and since you are the storyteller of this game, it's up to you to understand which things have significance over the course of the story as the story unfolds, so that you can correctly shepherd your players towards the inevitable resolution of the story. Once you've got a good understanding of what all is contained in the story, it's time to translate that into how you're going to present that to your players at your role-playing game table. Now, my advice for this is to make a plot map, or to draw up a flow chart of what are all the significant pieces of the adventure that you're going to present to your players one at a time, going from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. I like to do this using index cards. I go from the beginning of the story, where do the players begin their adventure, make a card for it. Where are the individual steps that the players are going to take as they're progressing through the adventure? What are all the significant phases or different pieces of the story as the players are going to be running through it? Make a card for each one. Where is the story going to conclude? Where does the final showdown or the final resolution with the story villain take place? Make a card for that one. In short, you want to be paying attention to the nouns of the story. These are the people, places, and things that are relevant to the story's progression, and that are going to be important for the players to interact with, or to experience, or to uncover as they play through the story from beginning to end. What are all the critical steps that are necessary for resolution of the story? Are there items that the players need to go find? Are there characters to the story, NPCs to the story that the players need to go and rescue or need to go and find if they're missing before they go and they deal with the final bad guy? Do they need to weaken the final bad guy before they actually go and encounter the bad guy? What are all of the critical pieces that are necessary to walk towards that final resolution? And lastly, how does the story resolve? Is it enough to simply vanquish the villain, or do the adventurers also need to find some kind of resolution or some kind of antidote to the villain's scheme in order to save the townspeople? Now, I recommend grouping these by location. Since your players are going to be moving from location to location throughout the story, having your different plot elements organized by where the players are and when they arrive at new places is probably the easiest way to keep track of the details. That way, when you're playing through it at your table, you also have an easy reference to remember what's relevant for each location when the players are there. Now, I do have one piece of advice for as you're doing this, as you're making your plot map. If the adventure printing does come with a map, pull that out. Have that map handy. It may be useful for you as you are visualizing what the different components are for the story and how the story progresses, to have the map sitting in front of you so that you can see from a visual representation where geographically in the world the players are expected to be for each of these things happening. Have that map on hand. It'll make your life a lot easier. Now, the whole reason why we make this flowchart or the plot map of events that are going to happen throughout the story is because, unlike a movie or a book where the viewer or reader is led by the hand through the plot progression with no real ability to make a decision about what's going to happen in the story, in a role-playing game, your players are making choices for their characters as they go. They're guaranteed to do things that are suboptimal or miss things that are important, or to think that something else is important when they really should be trying to go in another direction. This is all fine. This is all a part of the exploratory element of playing role-playing games. By having your story broken down into the different components, into the different sections, you're going to have an easier time as the dungeon master, allowing your players to naturally explore through the game world and have faith that they'll eventually make their way back towards the things that are most significant. Now, once you have your flowchart or your plot map laid out, now it's time to label each of those sections, each of the pieces of that flowchart, with the kinds of encounters that you're going to be dealing with in that particular section. Now, I've mentioned before, all things in role-playing games boil down to the three pillars of adventuring, and those three pillars are exploration, social role-playing, and combat. Everything that you ever do in a role-playing game comes down to one or more of those things. So now, as you're getting ready to run this game, you want to flag each of the different sections of your plot map or flowchart, if you're doing it in a flowchart style, with which kind of those pillars, which kinds of encounters are going to be relevant for that particular interaction, that particular section of the story. Anytime that you've got a new location, and that includes going room to room inside of a dungeon or something like that, flag that as exploration. You're going to be doing exploration discussion there. Anytime that you've got townspeople or NPCs that have some kind of relevant or significant information for the characters in the story, flag that as social role-playing, so you can get ready to do some social role-playing. And anytime that you've got monsters or beasts or henchmen of the villain or the big villain himself, flag that as combat. You got to get ready for combat encounters happening there. Now, if you're doing the index card style, I like to use colored stickers for this, where I assign one sticker color to each of the pillars, and then I literally put the stickers down on each of the cards to remind myself as I'm getting ready, oh, this is going to be social interaction, or oh, this is going to be some kind of combat here. I need to get my NPC stat blocks ready for when I'm going to be fighting, or that it's going to be an exploration heavy thing that I got to get my descriptions ready for this. By breaking it down into these sections, you'll be able to then go through your plot map and from start to finish know what kinds of things you need to get ready to do in the game. So if you're following along, go ahead, pick out your adventure module that you're planning on running and start giving it a read through. When you're ready, build out your plot map, start mapping out the different sections of the story and start dividing it up into which of the three pillars that each of the sections are going to fall under. In the coming videos, I'm going to do a deep dive on each of those three pillars. I'm going to start with exploration and give you tips on how to prepare to do exploration. What do you need to do when you're actually running exploration at the table? What kinds of rules are going to be involved and what my suggestions are for running that well. And then we'll go into social role-playing and combat, and we'll cover the minimum set of rules that you need for each of them in order to actually execute this at your table. By the time that we're done with all three, you'll be ready to go. You'll have all the information that you need to prep for your first game session and then actually execute. You're almost there. So go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel so you know when those extra videos are coming out. If there's anything that I didn't cover, or if you have any specific questions about how to run pieces of the officially printed modules from Wizards of the Coast, leave me a comment down below below or come talk to me over on social media. You can find us at Titan Bear Gaming on basically all forms of social media, and I'm pretty active there, so I'd be happy to talk to you about it there as well. So I think that about does it. Until next time I see you, have more fun, would you? It's good for you.